The biggest excuse for not facing changing the system is UBI, because it's almost like the get out of jail card, isn't it? It's like, well, this is too hard, so we'll just write everybody a check. The danger is you're just accepting that, so we'll just accept there'll be lots of job losses, when actually it could be the inverse. There could be hundreds of jobs created. Do we know what to do with the time that we get back? The big promise of AI eventually is time. We're going to get, as we get more and more time back, how are we going to use it? If most people are now suddenly going to get back 2 hours, 3 hours, what are you going to do with that?
Welcome to the Swedish Wealth Institute podcast. I am your host, Daniel Wood. Today's episode is one I'm very excited about because we're talking about artificial intelligence and discussing things most people avoid. This won't be the hype. It won't be tools. It's not like here are the latest 50 prompts. It is what AI is actually doing to work, to leadership, to education, and to society as a whole. And what this will mean for us if we get it right, or what it could mean if we get it dangerously wrong. My guest is Michael Clark, author of Our Moment. He is a global advisor on the future of work, data, and AI. He's worked in the intersection of technology, leadership, policy at a global scale, including building and advising on major transformation work inside one of the biggest payment networks in the world. And in this conversation, we go deep into the idea of his core of his book, Humanity is the Missing Piece of the AI Revolution. So we're going to talk about why most leaders are trying to govern AI like it's just software and why that's a mistake. While the real competitive advantage won't be in having AI, but having a workforce that knows how to think with AI. So the difference between skills and abilities and why ability-based businesses will win, and how data is becoming as important as electricity and water, and what that means for privacy, trust, and the future. So basically, if you're an entrepreneur, a leader, or someone who just wants to stay sharp in a world where the rules are changing fast, this is one of those episodes that will change the way you see what's coming. So before I introduce you to Michael, as always, I have a special gift for you as a thank you for joining us today. Before I share it, can I ask you a quick favor? If you've been enjoying the Swedish Wealth Institute podcast, please do what thousands of others all over the world have already done. Hit the follow or subscribe button so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. Now, here's your bonus. As a thank you for listening, I'm giving you 2 weeks free access to the Swedish Wealth Institute community, where you can implement what you learn here with other entrepreneurs from all over the world. It's not just about theory, it's execution, feedback, accountability, with people all over the world running real businesses. So you'll find the link in the show notes. Go grab your free access while it's available. All right, here we go. Here's Michael Clark. What we do in the Swedish Wealth Institute, we're working so much with technology, automating things, adding AI. And then I read your book, Our Moment, which obviously talks about that. And as we were saying here before the call, that it's kind of the precursor to the Matrix, as you said. So it's really cool to hear your thoughts. And you've worked in the future of work and AI at a global scale. For you, when did kind of these what did it stop becoming abstract and really becoming personal for you?
I think probably 3-4 years ago, when the book wasn't a thing, I was involved in a lot of work in my past role. And a lot of that was actually trying to create insight and actually trying to build some of the early stuff, even before AI was a mainstream thing. And I think one of the things that stood out for me was looking beyond the technology, because it was almost like this moment that said, "Ooh, are people capable of even using this? And do we even have the literacy skills today to be able to even use this?" And having advised companies for so long on technical change and business change, it's almost like we were constantly repeating the same cycles. And we could see at the time that a piece of technology was going to be so disruptive that it was like, are these businesses do they even know what this means, right? This is not just implementing software. This is a fundamental business change.
You were already seeing how that what we're now getting, where all of a sudden it's not just menial labor that's being automated out and taken over, it's actual creative work. You already saw that before ChatGPT was a thing.
100%. Like we had, I'll give you an idea how far ahead we were. Like we were talking about virtual reality maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And then we suddenly became credible when Facebook changed their name.
Yeah.
And then clients kept ringing us up all the time. And it was the same with AI. It was almost, we could kind of see where it was going. But of course, I was really fortunate where I worked before because we actually used the tools ourselves for the payment network. So AI, for everybody's benefit, is not new. It's almost from the 40s. But it's been used in financial services for a very long time in fraud, because obviously you can't, with a human eye, you can't track every transaction. So we were looking at it then in terms of, okay, if this actually goes on the consumer side, at the time it was like, what are the propositions? What are the business change? But when you took a step back, you could see, I would say, little chinks in the armory of our ability to use it, but also our ability to govern it, and our ability then to think about it responsibly, but also then what does it mean for the workforce, given how, if you remember how much the internet disrupted the workforce. This is something else altogether. And at the time, it was almost like, like an air out of the room moment where maybe this needs a bit more thinking.
I can imagine. Well, give us a little more background. What was your role before you became an author? And then we'll get in more into what the book kind of shows us.
So I can name the company. So I was at Mastercard for about 4.5 years, hence the payment link. So I built some, I guess, significant products for them. And then I moved where I live now in Dubai to basically do 2 jobs. One was kind of inherited, one was the actual job. So the actual job was I ran all of digital transformation and strategy consulting globally. But the other hat that I ended up wearing was I became the C-suite and central bank and government advisor on tech. So future tech, payments, AI, and data itself. So that gave me firsthand then the feedback from very senior executives on what this meant for them, but also how prepared they really were. And actually, did they really understand what this meant? And by the way, those conversations still go on today, which probably won't surprise you in terms of leadership readiness for this sort of thing.
Yeah, I can imagine. And one of the things that kind of is a recurring theme throughout the book and in other talks you've done is you're talking about humanity being the missing part of the AI revolution. Well, what does that even mean to us? Like, what is humanity being part of the AI?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think I was talking about someone yesterday. I used to work for a service design agency many years ago as a partner, and I think that instilled that human-led design of technology. I think today, if you look at AI, everything is really about the technology. It's like we've got to build it faster, bigger, quicker. And it's also got to be, it doesn't matter how much it costs, it has to be smarter than a human, right? When we think about agentic AI. For me, the human part of this is a couple of dimensions. The first is looking at AI as not really AI, but more of a form of collaborative intelligence. So it's almost like actually this is a collaborative partner for the human being. So really, if you think about the machine now owns pattern matching and knowledge, because that was really what we did at a certain point in time. That means now we need to bring something to the table to bring that knowledge to life, which means having the ability to have judgment, the ability to critically think, the ability to debate. But then also when you then bring the human side into this, it also asks you the questions of, well, should we do this because we can? So there's certain bits in AI that should be off the table because that should always belong to a human being. But then there's also then, I think like critical decision making. So like, I think if you hear the joke, like if we ever outsource wisdom to AI, then we've got a problem. Wisdom to me means that turning knowledge into action. So there will be certainly tasks that an AI will do, and it's doing it now, right? AI can organize your desktop for you now if you wanted to. But there's always going to need to be a human in the loop. And I think that's always been the history of AI. Even the early creators of AI said that AI should never make decisions in its own right unless instructed by the humans do so, but the humans in the loop.
It can advise, but the actual decision has to be made by the human being.
Ideally, yeah. And I think when we think about then what does the humanity mean? So let's go to policy and let's talk about how this is being governed globally. we're still trying to govern it like a piece of technology, which is my concern. It's almost like, okay, what does this mean for the changes that now need to take place? So that's human-led, not technology-led. So it's not the engineers driving the agenda. It's people going, okay, maybe we look at this differently, and AI is a catalyst, which is a big part of the book, which is to say, right, let's not fear this technology, which I don't, by the way. I'm hugely, a big fan of AI. But I look at it in the lens of, actually, this could be a catalyst to undo some of the things we should have fixed a long time ago, which is the way we teach our children, which is probably very outdated. The way that we even look at policy, policies are written and take a long time to change. So maybe we just need things that are more adaptable. So it's all of these little things that if you take a human lens on it and you say, well, actually, we need to make sure this technology doesn't erode the role of people, but also there's a place for the next generation and a role to play. And the technology remains what it is. It's just a tool to amplify what humans can do, or replaces things that humans don't want to do because it's repetitive. But there's still a place for that human that's been replaced from that task.
Right. And can still make decisions and still direct. It was one of our speakers usually says that it's all of a sudden now everyone in the world has gotten 10 employees. So everyone is now a manager.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, right. And I think the biggest excuse for not facing changing the system is UBI, because it's almost like the get out of jail card, isn't it? It's like, well, this is too hard, so we'll just write everybody a check. When the reality is what's really hard but more sustainable is actually looking at what needs to change more broadly. And then that becomes more sustainable over time. Because then otherwise the danger is you're just accepting that, oh, this is really hard, so we'll just accept there'll be lots of job losses. When actually it could be the inverse. There could be hundreds of jobs created because of inclusion and because of various changes that we need to make that we probably didn't do when we could have maybe 20 years ago.
Well, I mean, you mentioned this with the internet, and I mean, every technological jump does make certain roles obsolete. I mean, just look at when Ford invented the basically modern industry, right? All the artisans went out of business, but we created millions of new jobs instead. But I'm thinking, as a leader now, as an entrepreneur, what are we generally misunderstanding about the use of AI and like the future of work and the workforce?
So yeah, this is the great question. So if you're a leader of an organization, let's start there. Like historically, what would you have done to hire people? Well, you'd have got a resume or CV, however you want to describe it. You'd have done a job description, and then you'd hired your individual for the job description. And when times get tough, you go to the balance sheet and then you look at your cost base, and then you remove people who may be doing duplicate things you think. What you don't realize is a lot of skills just left the building. So the real thing leaders need to be looking at now is not CVs and titles, otherwise they're really important. It's what are the abilities my workforce needs? And how do I train those abilities? So actually now I amplify those people with AI. Because it'll get to a point where every business, it'll be like customer experience back in the 90s, when they used to use the example of the two coffee shops next door to each other. They sell the same coffee, but more people go to B. It's because of the experience, right? AI will be the same. Two companies next door to each other, both have AI, both sell the same thing. But in company A, they've trained all their staffs on the appropriate abilities that they need. Again, critical thinking, reasoning, judgment, the ability to improve the model, and then they use AI and it amplifies. And on top of that, they've also got the skills and experience and domain knowledge to actually really push the model. Because what leaders shouldn't look at AI as a way to save money on efficiency, which is the usual automation conversation. What it is a way of doing is, if I have extreme knowledge of my job or my area, and I have abilities at the same time, I can improve AI. Because then if it comes back to me with an error, I'm clever enough to say, well, actually, that's not right. Make it this, change this. Over time, that business will become twice as successful as the business next door, because they also have the talent and they have a continual learning model in the business based on the abilities every role requires to use AI.
So what you're looking at now is you're basically saying that skills in themselves become less important. CVs become less important because the AI can do most of the skills. And especially if robotics keeps going, they can do a lot of the skill work. What you need to train people is their brains, their ability to question, what is AI telling me?
Yeah, so skills is part of an abilities-based learning model. So you're basically shifting the organization to learning ability-based learning. And then
what do you mean by that? Just so everyone understands, what does ability-based?
So think of ability. So it's like when you're doing the 100 meters, right? If once I'm able to do it, I've got the capability to do it. So you're training people in the business on the appropriate abilities they need within their role, but the ability to constantly evolve. So abilities is a long line of things. So I've touched on a few of them, like judgment, ethics, critical thinking, reasoning, domain skills, because you'll have to have something specific, particularly if you're in medical and things like that, which is specific to your job. But then there's also the ability to unlearn as well as learn. There's the ability to be resourceful, all of these things. So those, in my mind, are abilities. And then you can then build a competency framework in a business around those and measure those. So, and then also then it's a constant thing. So then those people are working with AI, they're using these abilities, they're being trained on and working with the machine, and they're evolving those competencies over time. So then they strengthen some of the skills that they may have lost in those abilities. Because this is the point I think people are missing with AI. And the smartphone was the real first start of the journey. Before the smartphone, we could all remember telephone numbers. Now we can't. As time progresses, that muscle is going to get weaker and weaker. So by giving away knowledge to the machine now, we need to do three things. We need to strengthen the things that we have and we're good at. We need to regain things that we might have lost because of technology. And there's other abilities we're going to probably have to learn from scratch. And one of those will be data literacy, because it's probably not one that most people are the strongest at, because our attention spans are not great because of technology. So there's going to be, if you think of those three things, those three areas, that's the challenge for leaders now, is how do I get my organization upskilled with the right abilities to take advantage of this technology to make us competitive?
Right. Yeah, I'm really seeing like what you're saying. It's like you're going from being an employee to a manager. Kind of think of it as a programmer, right? When you're a programmer, you knew all the code, you could write anything. As a manager, you probably know less about the actual coding than your employee does. They create everything. You just need to know enough to see, are they actually doing what they're supposed to doing, or are they screwing around doing something else? And then you have to have the ability to lead and make sure things are moving in the right direction.
Yeah, you have to look at this as like a game of tennis, right? The machine needs us and we need the machine. And there's a reason for that argument, is the machine needs us because we need to be able to interpret what it tells us. But we also need to be able to push back to improve the machine. And then we as people need the machine because there's no way on earth we can compete with AI in terms of how fast it will come up with an answer from a document that I give it, or search the internet and find me the answer. So between the two of us, if we match both of our strengths, all of a sudden we amplify not only the technology, but we amplify the individual, because actually we unlock human potential. And this isn't just for the workforce. This is actually how you teach children. As you move away from memorizing to pass tests to actually focusing on the abilities that children need. So by the time they enter the workforce, you have a workforce that's fluid and adaptable, which is what we don't have today.
No, I agree. And I see this a lot in, the way our businesses continue to grow and expand and change, is I think a fear or a hope/fear that we kind of have is, when working with AI, we see what it doesn't do well, but we also imagine what will happen when it really does it well. I was creating basically our business flywheel, which for anyone listening, you know what this is, Michael, but for anyone listening, basically it's a simplified map of a company that kind of shows, this is one of our core strengths that benefits this other part of our business that benefits, and it comes back to the first one. And, by improving any one part of this business, everything enhances and it creates this momentum going up. And I was creating this for the company. And obviously, when you do it for your own company, it's not that simple as one thing just leading into another. There's arrows going all across over the place because everything affects everything. So I'm creating this, and I got the overall map, and I did it on a piece of paper. I took a photo and I gave it to ChatGPT, and it creates this beautiful infographic of it. But a couple of the things are a little off. So I'm starting to give it feedback and say, well, can you create an arrow from this box to this box? And, the first couple, there was a bunch of arrows that needed fixing. So the first two, yeah, that was fine. It got them right. But then as I got deeper into it, it just completely gave up. It just started making arrows all over the place. And like, yeah, you want arrows? I got arrows. And, I had to start new chats and everything. And finally, I got it to a point where it's like, it looks good now. There's like 2 arrows missing. And it's like, it's not worth the time. I'm just going to let my team go into Canva and draw 2 arrows. Like it's not that hard. But, and it really showed the limitations to the intelligence as of now, that what still is a really simple task for someone who knows how to use any kind of, Photoshop software, draw an arrow from here to there, was really, really difficult. And that was even putting ChatGPT in the pro mode and giving it all like 20 minutes to think about it. It still couldn't get it right. But at the same time, it can do all these other stuff at an amazing level. And I think we kind of start looking at like, well, what happens when it does all of this really, really well, because the development is going so quickly. Like, at what point are we, at what point do we become superfluous? At what point does it take over? And I think that is the fear a lot of people have.
Yeah, I think so. And that is why, in a reason being, is like I wrote the book is to remind people, like, we made a lot of mistakes when we built technology in the past, which you read in the book, and a lot of choices actually which set technology on the path that it's on today. And there's an opportunity to re-look at the way that we're implementing AI. And again, it's not about putting the handbrake on, and it's certainly not stopping innovation, but it's asking, what are the guide rails that we need to put in place? What do we need to rethink when we think about policy? What do we need to rethink about education? What do we need to think about healthcare? Because these are all things up for grabs. And that's why it's such an amazing opportunity, because if we actually get it right, think of the potential in people you can unlock and what the future businesses will be. Like, we're on the cusp of a business of a single individual that could be worth $1 billion. And that's not fantasy. That's probably a few years away. But, that's why I met so many CEOs and the argument was 50-50. 50% of them thought it was going to change the world in a positive light and change their business. The other 50 thought it was the end of humanity and the end of their business as they know it. But that just spoke to the confusion out there, that there are different camps and different voices, whoever shouts the loudest. I think if you take a step back and accept that this is a technology that, done in the right way, could be massively impactful for the world. And I think that's the important statement. Right now, AI is only building a picture of only a small percentage of the world. We forget that, from my background, financial inclusion has still never been solved, really. Most of that's due to identity problems, really. But I would argue that probably data inclusion is probably worse. And access to connectivity and access to the internet is probably worse. So there's a whole myriad of things that have to be sorted out politically, locally, regionally, at different levels for this technology, beyond just the coding and the refinement.
What does that mean for you when you say data inclusion, and like what does that mean for a person?
Yeah, so I guess in simple terms, it's just having the ability to create data and access it and use it, and having a device that enables you to
being able to plug into everything that is available in the world.
Yeah, so if you think about AI today, it's probably only building a small picture of the world we live in, which is the markets and the economies that are lucky enough to have the infrastructure and have the devices. But we know from where the myriad of data centers congregate, very few of those find their way to Africa. Very few find their ways to markets with huge populations.
And so that means there's a lack of data from those territories, which means the AI is influenced much, much more by, let's call it Western.
Yeah, Western economies probably, and that's a problem, right? Because there's so much we can learn from those economies that don't have access. There's probably diseases we can solve because we get access to that information. And again, the danger is, and we saw it in the early days, there's so many comedy moments of bias and things from models because of limited data, right? But that's still a thing.
Oh, that will always be a thing, I think. And the I think one of the dangers now, as they've tried to remove a lot of that, is instead it's truly just become a mirror of what you're saying. So like it's very hard to get ChatGPT to properly critique you. It will generally, like, if it knows you want critique, it will give it like in a way to like make you happy about it. But generally it's going to say, well, you are awesome, Michael, and this book you wrote is the best book I've ever read. Now you've asked for critique, so I'll give you a couple, but in general I just want you to know that you are the best.
I do wonder how much of that is to keep you engaged as well from a dopamine perspective. You never know, but cynically. But no, you're right. And
I mean, that's one of the differences with having a real mentor, right? Who will challenge you and say, Michael, what have you done? Go and rewrite this, right? You got to think this through.
And that's why, actually, like, all jokes aside, that's where the editor came in for the book, because a machine can look. Don't get me wrong, AI was massively helpful for the book because I think I said to you before, it helped me with the flow of the book and the character arcs. And making sure that everything was tight and everything the publisher had said to me, I'd covered in my edits. But it couldn't deal with, the hardline critique from the publisher. As you say, that individual that says, nah, that's still not it. I don't get this. Where are you going with this? What's this? And I think that comes back to the human component. Because again, if you look at this as just a guiding piece of technology, giving you insight and information, you still need someone to call it as it is, or you still need someone to make a decision.
That, I think, is the question, though, because we see how quickly it develops. And I think because it's gone so fast, like ChatGPT is 3 years old now, at least the public facing, obviously. So the feel, I think, is, well, where would this stop? Like, it's like seeing a child grow up and just like the intelligence exploding. Like, at what point will it get over those limitations, or are those basically built in? Will it not be able to overcome those limitations?
So this is the thing. It's a great observation. The limitations right now is 2026, I think, will be the year that, and we're seeing it already. Like, if you look at Reuters or you look at any newspapers, the amount of data-related articles in January alone is incredible. Like, you've got the New York Times suing Google. You've got copyright infringements from book publishers. You've got governments arguing about data privacy. It's going to get to a point, and I wrote in the book, that the answer probably is data licensing and license agreements for data, because then data can flow freely. The challenge for AI will be, at a certain point, will be access to data and generating it. I think we can't underestimate the role of trust in all of this. Because AI, everybody's all in, like they were in the early days of the internet. But then the more you start to see data breaches, the more you start to see data concerns around AI, you will start to see less people putting data in, because that's normal, unless those safeguards are in place. So I think it's 2026 could be the year.
And that will then basically stop its development because it doesn't have more information to work off of.
Yeah, it won't have a complete, you've got to give the general public also the confidence and the trust in the model. I honestly think 2026 will be a super interesting year for regulation. Like, the EU, literally a few days ago, agreed that they would come up with one view of Europe Inc. So it'd be interesting to see, do they come up with a full-blown European AI policy? Do they come up with other things within that? So then that's the start. So 2026 is going to be a really interesting time. You talk about the speed. I think I said this when GPT came out. Like, it took 50 years to get about 50 million people to use a telephone. It took like about a month to get people to use that many in ChatGPT. No, 2-3 days, in fact. Right? It's 2-3 days.
Yeah, no, it was crazy. Like, I had no idea what it was, but by, early December, I'd heard like 5, 6 people mention it. I was like, oh, well, I guess I got to check it out, without realizing that like this was 3 week old technology. Like I felt like I was way behind the curve, and it was like, no, you're fine.
But it's interesting, right? So you and I are in this and we experience it. But can you imagine being policymakers in Capitol Hill or trying to figure this out? And by the time they have their convened meetings, the technology's moved again.
One of our speakers, Kane Minkus, who he has this amazing 16-week AI course for entrepreneurs. And it's really about like the entrepreneurial side of it. Like it doesn't talk about the ethics. It's basically, this is how you use it to improve your business. So it's a very niche part of it. But even with that, every 16 weeks, he restarts the course, and it's different every time. So I've gone through it 5 times, and it's like, it's a completely different course, because just in 16 weeks, what he taught like in lesson 1 16 weeks ago is just not, it's barely applicable now because it's changed so quickly.
Yeah, very much. Like I started my Substack using completely different tools that I use now.
Yeah.
But then that's only been a very short period of time.
So let's give the lingo to everyone listening. Substack.
Oh yeah, sorry. So Substack is like an environment where you can publish your essays and your posts, like articles you want people to read. Now, whenever I used to publish things before, I was the old-fashioned guy. I was using Shutterstock, and I was using these sites where you can buy images and put them in. But now it's like, so now I went into Notebook LM, and you just dump your whole story in, and it just generates infographics and videos in like about 20 seconds. And it's like, right, it's not always perfect. Like you, I have to go to Canva and clean stuff up and move stuff around. But it's honestly like you can churn out images.
Well, I mean, for me, like I was flying, I was at airports and stuff, and, I'm just scribbling things on a pad and paper. And, I have this great infograph, and, I was on my phone, so I couldn't go in and do the arrows. So I did have fun trying to mess about, trying to find different ways to prompt it right. And, basically practice my prompt engineering. But, and finally just gave it to the team and said, look, guys, this has taken me 2 hours. It's going to take you 30 seconds. Can you just do this last part for me, please?
You end up like jumping tools as well to see if you have the answer in another tool.
I usually do, but just being off my phone and traveling, I was like, I'm just because it was so close too. Like I would get it to fix this arrow, and every time it got it wrong, I would go back and I'd edit my message and I'd redo it, and like it was so close to perfect, and then it just didn't get the whole way through. So I was like, no, all right, I give up. But when you were writing the book, Our Moment, like what was the question you really wanted to answer? Like what do you want people to leave with?
I kind of wrote it in probably the first chapter when he had the dream, right? Not to give it all away. Is there
the first chapter you can give away?
Yeah, so I think I do give it away. Is like, do we want to automate ourselves away? And is there a world where the data we create is ours to use? And do we recognize that the technologist is just a mirror of us? And in a way, the whole premise of the book was, and the reason I called it Our Moment is because I think we're at a crossroads moment. And we haven't been here for a very long time. Probably the last time we were here was in the Industrial Revolution, where that was the last time really the economy changed dramatically. And the way we learned and the way we worked and lived radically changed. So it was almost, the reason the takeaway for Our Moment was for people to maybe ask if there's a different way. Not to say we don't want the technology, but to say, could we use the technology in a different way? In the sense of, is there a way in a world where people still matter in this technology debate? And is this an opportunity to unlock human potential in ways that we've never done before? Look, over the last 20, 30 years, in the last 9 years, there's been high-profile TED Talks on, are we educating creativity out of children, for example? So the warning signs were there.
And that's getting even more dangerous now, right? I mean, when that's our number one skill. And I mean, I remember in our prep call for this interview, we were talking about the Disney movie or Pixar movie WALL-E, where, you see the humans on this ship who basically become pleasure bots who are just everything is fed to them, and they can barely stand up and walk because they haven't had to. Technology is basically serves them completely. And I think there is a one version of our future that takes us there, where people become basically just, it doesn't become the evil, the Matrix, the Terminator. It becomes that we have perfect service, and we don't even have to get up. We have, the bed becomes a chair that becomes a movable, spaceship that drives us around.
I wrote it in a way to get people to think of the alternative in a positive way, to say, well, actually, we kind of like that view of the world. And it was also a way, in a subtle way, to speak to the people who can make change. So those who sit on Capitol Hill, those who sit in Parliament, those who sit in these governmental bodies, who have the opportunity to look at AI and go, well, actually, we've made a few mistakes over the last 20 years in terms of how we've looked at this technology. And even the way that we teach our children is probably up for change. Why don't we use this moment?
If you were the one making policy now, what would you put in place to protect us all?
So first of all, the first thing is I wouldn't create policy. I would create more adaptable frameworks, because policy takes too long to change, depending on your country. So for example, in Egypt, my numbers may be a little bit off, but it's from my memory. But if you make a policy in stone, it can take anything from 2 years to change that. Well, you and I both know technology moves daily now, not...
Oh, yeah. Just look at, 4 years ago, AI didn't exist. So that's 2 cycles of change. And
yeah. And I'd also look at who was in the room in those discussions, right? Because we can't just put all the blame on policymakers, because they can't, for the life of them, understand this technology and all the things that it touches and connects with. So I would look at, my first thing would be, how do we make this a collaboration between industry, between technologists, between regulators, and so on. And also, it can't be a political thing, because this isn't about politics. This is really about what we want the next generation to be and what we want this generation to be.
What would policy look like if it's not policy, if it's more adaptable? What does that look like?
So it's still in the legalese and all the language you would expect, but it's more fluid and more adaptable, is the point. So the policy would govern how data is used, for example. So, for example, today, data is mostly used under the banner of privacy. It's very rarely used for innovation. HIPAA in America is a great example. It's almost impossible to move your data from one state to another medically. So the people who lose out in the end are the patients, ironically. So, and also, no regulation in the world today regulates the input into AI. So there's nothing in any regulation that talks about you need to be able to tell the regulator where all the data came from to build the machine in the first place.
Oh, so if I built my own AI, there is no rules of how I train my AI.
Correct. As long as you can prove how it's processed and the output isn't risky and all the other bits. Now, it's varying per...
So basically it's saying you can't have a racist output, but I'm fully allowed to put a racist input, just have rules for how it speaks that doesn't make the output sound racist.
Right. And also think about this, right? So the reason there's all this publishing debate up for grabs now is because most of the model training data came from public sources. So again, this isn't a knock, because the other piece of the book, which is I really wanted to land with people, is data isn't just a transaction. It's not something we create because we did something. It's actually a representation of culture. It's a representation of who we are, our memories. It just so happens in a system, it's stored as zeros and ones, but on a screen, it's a photograph. Like when you and I make a payment when we went somewhere, we don't remember the payment, we remember the experience. So I think the reason I would look at data differently under policy is also to make sure that it's treated as almost like a protected asset in a way. Because whether we like it or we don't, data now is a representation of culture. All the information we create on the internet, all the information that we consume on a daily basis is probably more important than the technology in a way.
Do you try to open up the flow of data, like there with the HIPAA laws, that my healthcare, and I mean the international travel, that it's easier for people to get medical records, but at the same time you'd want to control it more so that it's more regulated?
Yeah, because I think if you want to take it to its extreme, I would argue that data is probably as important as water and electricity today. Yeah, because if data didn't exist, this call wouldn't happen.
No, exactly.
So data has become so critical to everyday life that bizarrely, like I wrote a piece on it the other day, if it wasn't valuable, governments wouldn't try and protect it, companies wouldn't build moats around it, and people wouldn't be sued for it. The problem is it's unpriced, and people don't know what to do with it. So the focus of the conversation is constantly the technology that consumes it. So for a regulator or for the government, and also deep fakes are only going to increase. We're only going to see more breaches of security. So the question in the room is, are we looking at the wrong thing? Do we need to look at the data so we do it in such a way where it's treated as an asset, but at the same time, it's allowed to flow freely with the right controls in place and the right guardrails? And everybody then has the literacy skills to use it, and everybody can actually use it for their own gain and their own use. So we create an ecosystem and environment where it can flow freely, but in a protected way. But also then we lose some of the centralization controls around data that we see today. Because most businesses who may be listening to this, most leaders, their biggest struggle, I imagine, is the data they collect in their business on a daily basis, because they don't know what it's worth, but they know they need to keep it. And the storage bills are probably through the roof constantly because they don't know what to do with the data. And that's, in essence, that's one pillar of the book, is to say, look, data was here before we were. It was a cave painting. It was a representation of our family on a wall. We just turned it into transactions. So the point is, as we go into the AI story, there's an opportunity to reframe the role of people in this, but also the role of data in our identity. And that was really the cornerstone of the book. It's like almost like the story of purpose and actually how we reframe the way we look at data, which will benefit businesses and individuals and nations. And at the same time, then, if we reframe the way we look at people, not as liabilities on a financial balance sheet, but actual real assets, and we look to unlock their potential with the technology, suddenly things start to change a little bit. And that was really the purpose of the book, but to do it in a story format that people would remember, and remember the experiences of the people in the story.
Nice. Well, I think a lot of people getting into AI, and you mentioned that 50% of top level managers are kind of, it's the end of humanity. And I think you go down through organizations, and that fear gets, the percentage gets bigger and bigger, because, as a company owner, it's amazing, right? My team, we are expanding our team, but we would have to expand our team so much quicker if it wasn't for AI, or probably we wouldn't be able to expand the company because we couldn't, the money just wouldn't make sense anymore. But if someone is feeling overwhelmed by AI and change, like what do you see as one principle they should be anchoring to?
I think I always believe, just use it. If you're in the fortunate group of people that have access to it and can use it, the biggest skill we all need is curiosity. Is actually apply curiosity and use it daily. Now, if you're a leader, now I've had this conversation many times. There's an element of FOMO, where there's the fear of doing nothing, right? Because it's become such you have to have this in your business because it's going to change everything if you don't in your competition. Even I alluded to it on this conversation, right? The truth is, the only all in, and most senior people say, well, I need to go all in. And the answer is yes and no. You need to go all in on the strategic decision to use AI. Absolutely.
Oh, we love using it. I mean, it's amplifying what we're able to do for clients and the experience all over the place.
But even before you get there, strategically at a board level, or if you're just a one-person company or a two-person company, whatever, you make the decision to say, do you know what? AI is going to be part of my business in some shape or form. Now, that doesn't mean then you go all in how you use it. What you do is you take one use case at a time, or one area of your business to try it. Because then if you're spending lots of money, then you're not doing it in one go. Like when people say all in, they assume I'm going to buy all these servers.
Yeah, buy every single AI out there and just put them in.
No, what you're going to do is strategically, you're going to say, it's my intention to use it in my business. But then as I roll it out in my business, I'm going to do it in a controlled way so I can see what the payoff is and the return. And then I will gradually do it through the business, but I can also gradually train the workforce piece by piece. But I think, if you're a leader in a business, and you've alluded to it, really nicely, which is, I think where you're really going is the fear of change that everybody has. And a big role of a leader, which is really underestimated, is nothing to do with technology. It's all about communication. And what is that? How are you communicating to your workforce? What does this mean for the people involved? No, you're not going to use your job. If we do it in the right way, it's going to amplify your job and actually going to make you even better.
We've tried to do, and it's exactly in that, is we've tried to make the AI implementation come from the down up rather than from the up down. So every one of our team has been able to go through an AI training course, so they understand how it works. And we have a value in the company where we say we want to get 1% better every day, which means we didn't try to put AI everywhere. We're trying to get a little bit better at it every day. So now each one of the team knows that they're on the hunt to try to find something that can be automated through AI. That's an improvement. So it's coming from them kind of saying, hey, you know what? There is an AI use case here. Can we do this? And it just organically now is being built into the business and new processes and new systems.
The biggest challenge, though, and I had this conversation yesterday, is do we know what to do with the time that we get back? Honestly, it's a really big thing, because the big promise of AI eventually is time. We're going to get time back from those things. Now, we all know that most people are terrible at time, because we're only really taught how to use time as a measurement metric, as in what time do I finish, what time do I start, where do I need to be, rather than actually understanding how to use time. So this is going to be an interesting thing with the AI growth, is as we get more and more time back, how are we going to use it? Because we both know the most successful people know how to use the 24 hours that they're given better than most people. Now, if most people are now suddenly going to get back, I don't know, 2 hours, 3 hours, what are you going to do with that? Now, I guarantee those people who are successful will use those to be even more successful. The people who are not that successful, will they have the mindset to understand how to use that time?
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And I mean, that's one of the things we've done with our team as well. We've trained them all in time management and priority thinking and all these things, so that and I think we're obviously in a beneficial position where we're a growing company, which means we're not worried about running out of stuff to do. For me, it's more, can we somehow become better at time management, become better at AI, better at automation, so that we don't have to hire people as quickly, so that I can manage the costs and we can grow safely. But I think the difference, obviously, for a more mature company that might not be looking to grow, then this can easily become a cost-cutting measure. And now you have the battle between workforce and management.
And that's a problem, right? Because in the early days of AI, we saw examples where the leaders did exactly what you just described. They saw this and go, my God, I can fire nearly all these people and I'll save a load of money and the business will still run and my balance sheet looks more healthy. The problem was they realized very quickly two things. One, they just left a whole load of experience leave the door, which actually is what AI needs for it to improve. Second piece is most of those people were call center people. So now the person ringing up lost the human touch. So I used to describe this to C-level people in my last job was, look, we want to get to a place where we're creating intelligence with a human touch. So we still have that human element. I guess my challenge to you would be the extra 1% everybody's improving every day. Is that also improving them as an individual?
That's one of our rules is we don't care where that is. Like 1% is imperceptible, right? And it can be, that's improve yourself, like, meditate more, health, wellness. It can be improving your skill set, or it's finding something in the company, and it can be tiny, right? We have all these automation, like email sequences that go through. You might find in one of our standard automations that a comma is misplaced. Great. We just got a little bit better today, because from now on, that comma is in the right place.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's the right way to do it. And you can do it both ways. Obviously, in the bigger organizations, it comes from leadership, because that's just the nature of the hierarchy.
Yeah, and again, especially when it's more of a mature company that isn't growing everywhere at the same time.
Their problem is, though, is probably worse than a smaller company is the amount of people who come to them and say, my God, we need to be using AI. Why are we not using AI? And the senior leader's responses to me was always the same, but no one can tell me why. Right? What's the impact? Because that's what they were alluding to. Like, I'm using AI for what? As in, what's the impact to the customer? What's the impact to the business? What's the impact to...
This is my company. Where do I put the AI?
Yeah, and also, what's my return? What's the impact? And I kind of, that's why a lot of the ways to think about AI is, it's like, look, in every technology cycle, there's always this fear of missing out phase. And I think it all comes back to, you don't build this, you don't buy technology then to look for problems in your business. You're doing it to make impact. So the bigger question is, sometimes, by the way, it's not even AI that's the answer to your question. It could be something else, like moving a process, changing something.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things are purely automation that in some cases can have an AI element to the automation, but in other, like we use a system called Zapier that, takes data from one place and puts it into another. And, one of our best ones is when anyone wants to cancel like a community membership, we click one button here and that populates into 6 different places. We don't have to go and click 6 buttons.
And that's exactly the way it should be. But unfortunately, a lot of boards are under pressure and a lot of leaders because they have to be seen to be using AI, either externally from a PR standpoint or to their customers, because their customers say, well, shareholders, whatever. It's this tension. But no, I think understanding, using it, having the curiosity, doing it in the right way within your organizations, or even if it's just the two of you or you're a small company, I think curiosity and understanding how it can move the needle, everybody should be playing with it in some shape or form, for sure, if they have access to it.
That is very well said. That is one of the polar parts I see. There are certain people who are really like, well, the AI is going to destroy humanity, so I'm not going to use it. Like, I'm not going to feed the beast. And I try to say, like, well, that's probably the worst you can do, because, if you don't know what it is, how are you going to defend yourself against it? How are you going to be a part of it?
Exactly, because it's going to be the ones, this statement's been used many times, I'm not going to claim it, but the people will be the ones who actually use AI will be successful, not the ones that compete against it. The reason I wrote the book in the style that I did was because I didn't want to paint AI as the bad guy.
No, I like that part about it, that the machines was kind of more of a mirror to ourselves rather than the Terminator, like this, they're out to kill us.
And you'll notice I didn't blame any technology companies in the book, because my argument was they just inherited outdated systems and they operate as if the world was normal. So you can't blame them, because that's just the way the economy they found it.
In the end, if you look at OpenAI, they're developing an AI system that is brilliant. Like, I use it every single day, constantly. It's absolutely amazing. But there is, like, if it goes on uncontrolled in the wrong direction, it could have negative impacts as well on the world. But we reward it with our attention, with our money, and we decide as the consumer which way that will then go.
Yeah, and also I think the thing I wanted to do with the book is, because we forget as time is it, going back to time, but as time progresses in life and generations come and go, a lot of people don't know where this technology even comes from, like how it even started, because it's not something that's taught in the school. It's not something that's ever talked about. I would imagine it's probably, as scary as it is, and we're showing our age probably, but there's probably people 6 or 7 years old who don't know who Steve Jobs is.
Yeah, exactly.
Not taught in a classroom, and the parents just hand an iPad to them. Like, how are they ever going to know unless they find out?
They don't even know who Wozniak is, right? The Wizard of Woz is even more like, who is this?
Exactly. So that was another reason for the book, is to actually show people who are a younger age where the technology came from, but also the evolution, but also the things we missed. Like the most famous mistake, I think, of all time is Gary Kasparov versus Deep Blue, which I put in the book, which I think is probably the world's biggest mistake of AI, where we made the mistake of him competing with the machine.
That's the chess match?
Yeah, so this was in 1994, 95. The mistake and the missed opportunity is, could Gary Kasparov played with AI? Now, that would have been something, because then every child in the world probably would have wanted an AI as a partner at that point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that would have been smart. Make it a collaborative effort.
Exactly. Because then you could make the case that AI elevated human potential in that moment in a way that Gary Kasparov could never have done on his own.
Right. Instead of saying, hey, it beat him, AI in this case was smarter than the human, say, but, well, they're smarter together than they are apart, no matter who won a certain match.
Correct. And then basically the path continues when we get to AlphaGo, which is another board game. And then the more intelligent version of AI did the same thing. So we seem to be stuck in this pattern of AI has to be better than the human constantly.
Us versus them.
Yeah, and it's a battle that you'll never win. Because if you're breaking it down to task level stuff, well, clearly the machine is better. We've seen it in manufacturing.
Unless it's making an arrow from one box to another.
Then... Yeah, that I can't help you with.
but that's what's interesting, though. It still has some very specific holes in its knowledge.
Seriously, though, if you probably go back and try your arrows again in 2 weeks, a month, I bet you it works.
Yeah, exactly. It goes so quickly that it will plug those holes. But one of the things I liked about the book was, like, again, you've alluded to, like, the style of writing. It's not a business book. It's not, this is AI. Don't remember there being a single checklist anywhere in the book, right? It's a story. And we've obviously talked a lot about, the Alchemist and what an inspirational book that by Paulo Coelho is, which is the same idea, just set in a completely different time period, and how obviously you had different visions for writing it. For me, it really, when I was reading it, I saw the Tom Cruise movie Minority Report, and that kind of battle of identity and truth in a technological world where things are affecting us from all sides.
Yeah, it's funny because different people see different things. Obviously, The Alchemist was a massive inspiration because of the simplicity in the writing. It touched everyone. And I made so I did two things that my publisher said was a bit unusual. Obviously, I did The Alchemist style, but I found a way of embedding all the facts into the story. So all the facts are real. Everything that he discovers and he finds is completely real. All of those are genuine facts, researched.
Right. So it's not a fantasy book. It's futuristic sci-fi, but still within grasp of, like, this is, 10, 15 years away. It's not Star Trek.
No. So the book took 3 years to write for a reason, because I think
we're really showing both our age and nerdiness at this point, where our references are getting really bad at this point. I feel sorry.
The characters, what they're based on, this really nerdy. So basically, it took 3 years to write, but not the book that I ended up writing that got published. I had to solve so many problems in the writing; it became like R&D. So it was like, okay, if I'm going to put this on this device, people haven't got the data literacy, so I had to write the school's curriculum for AI. Then I had to write the future of work model for AI.
A little bit of like Tolkien creating the Lord of the Rings universe. He started by creating a language and then said, I created this amazing language, now it deserves a story to live in.
And the original book that I wrote was rubbish because it looked like a management consulting book, and it was just, checkbox, as you just said. And it was like, I'm bored reading this. But I had to go through it because they are genuine, real solutions that policymakers can implement. So then once I figured all of that out, it was okay, I now need to figure out the book I want to write.
Oh, I can imagine, though. That's the hard part of writing anything in the future, is you can't just jump into the future. You actually got to figure out, well, what would have happened from where we are now to get us to that point.
But also what would need to change, right? So I had to figure out what would need to change. And that was the benefit of my background. So I could solve the technology problem and the business problem and the regulatory problem. So all of that became real world things that the regulator could do for real now. So it's like, okay, fine. So I've solved that problem. Now I've got all these historical facts. How do I get people to remember them? And two people I met reminded me that, I don't think they did it intentionally, but they said, it was like, the first thing they said is people remember stories. We're storytellers. It was like, okay, I'll tell a story. And the second thing is, someone said to me, people always remember the one. Not like Neo Matrix one, but a one name to remember and a person. So that was like, okay. And then it all pieced together. Then I've been reading The Alchemist and all this stuff. I had to make it a hero's journey. Then I had to give him a loss, and I had to make him feel pain to then start the journey. And then it becomes almost like a learning arc for him. And all these different characters come into the story, exactly like The Alchemist. So I have my equivalent of a Santiago. I have all the characters that come into play. The difference is, as you rightly say, the world building for the book is radically different to The Alchemist on purpose, because I wanted the reader to feel it. So the writing is written in such a way that they feel like they're in it, and they're experiencing it. All the things that he sees, all the things that we could have, all the mistakes and the learnings, they feel part of it, which by the time they get to the end, my hope is they've gone through the same character arc as the lead character in a way.
No, that's cool. I think you really did find a good balance there, because again, that's the hard part when you're not just writing fantasy for fantasy's sake. You're actually trying to affect change in people and places. All right, we always end every episode with a rapid fire round. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and you just kind of go with whatever comes to mind. You ready?
Okay.
So my team has put these together, so they tend to be pretty tough. So yeah, sleeves up, ready to go.
I have sleeves ready, so we're good.
All right, here we go. Number 1, one fear about AI that's misplaced.
It'll take everybody's job.
Yeah. All right, 2, one human skill that will matter more than ever.
Critical thinking.
Yeah. One habit that people should start now to stay relevant.
Continuous learning.
Liking these. One belief about progress that you disagree with.
What we're going through now is like a natural evolution, and we should just accept it in a way. I think sometimes progress isn't linear. I think sometimes people think progress is a linear thing. I don't think it is. I think it goes through waves and cycles. So I think sometimes people think progress is a linear thing.
I like that. We talk about that a lot with our 1% better every day, that you don't see anything, right? You can go for a long time and, you're getting a little bit better. And then all of a sudden you hit kind of this breaking point, and it just...
Dangerous secret for the book. Every day I sat down and didn't tell myself I was writing a book. I only had one goal, 1,000 words a day. And eventually it all adds up to a book. Because if I went in there to say I was writing a book, I'd never do it. Too big a thing to solve.
Right. One little bite size. Yeah. All right. Last question here. One questions leaders should ask themselves every week.
Oh, every week. Am I making impact? Mm-hmm. Did we make impact this week? And impact can mean, did we make an impact for our customers, for our staff, and so on. And it could also be negative or positive. I think as a leader, your role every day and every week is to make impact.
Awesome. That is a perfect way to wrap this up. Now, we love spoiling our listeners and giving them gifts. And I know you've prepared something for them, so I'll let you spoil our listeners.
I think I said I would give away some chapters, right?
Yes, you did.
My publisher's going to hate me. But yes, so I'm giving away, I'll probably give you the first 2 chapters, actually, because they seem to hook people in. So yeah, so the first 2 chapters we're giving away. And I'm going to share obviously a link to the book itself that you can download.
Awesome. And we'll have that in the show notes, both where you can download and start reading and get access. And then of course, where you can get the full book. You can get the book on Amazon. I got it on my Kindle. So the moment we had our first conversation, I downloaded it right after and, could start reading it right away. So we'll add links to that down below. So, Michael, before we go, what do you hope that people will be doing differently after hearing this conversation?
A few things, I hope. One is, I think, not to be fearful of the technology, and really, if you're not using it, start using it and get curious. I think the other piece of the thing I'd like people to take away is that this also isn't a moment to be fearful. And I think the third piece of the puzzle, look, if you're listening to this and you're a leader, I'd also like you to take away that feel like you have to go into AI with a big bang either. I think there's a sensible way of going about it. And I think the final piece of the puzzle is your people will matter with this technology. It's not about efficiency. It's about giving them the skills and abilities to use it, because in the long term, it will lead to extreme business success.
That's a great way to end it. Michael, I appreciate you joining us here today. And we'll see you soon.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for joining us today with this episode with Michael Clark. If you haven't already, make sure you grab that gift from Michael in the show notes. And if you want to go deep, you might want to go and pick up the book, Our Moment, so you can start reading right away. Now, we always end with this segment where we try to figure out what is the difference that makes the difference. And here are 5 key takeaways that me and the team have found from this episode that will help you implement and make sure you're staying ahead of 99% of those who are treating AI like a trend. So number 1, stop thinking AI versus humans and start thinking collaborative intelligence. So the future isn't you against AI, it's about you learning to work with it. The machine brings pattern matching speed. You bring judgment, context, ethics, and decision making. Number 2, your competitive advantage isn't AI, it's an ability-based team. So 2 companies can have the same tools, but one will still dominate. Why? Because the winning company trains people in abilities, their critical thinking, reasoning, judgment, data literacy, and the ability to unlearn and adapt. So not just job titles and task skills, but actual decision-making ability. 3, keep humans in the loop where wisdom is required. So AI can advise, AI can draft, AI can accelerate, but the moment you outsource wisdom, turning knowledge into action and real-world decisions, you're gambling your business and your life on a tool that cannot take responsibility. Number 4, don't go all in emotionally, go in all in strategically. So Michael was really on point when he said this. Commit to AI as a strategic direction, but roll it out as one use case at a time. Measure the impact, train the team, improve the model, then you scale. That's how you avoid expensive chaos and, we got AI, but we don't know how to use it. 5, the hidden leverage is time, and most people won't use it well. So AI buys you time. Winners will reinvest that time into better thinking, better output, better relationships, better strategy. Losers just scroll more efficiently. So the weekly leadership question we can ask ourselves to make sure that everything is working is, what an impact did we have this week? So 2 important things before you go. I want to give you, as a thank you for listening, a ticket to our upcoming Swedish Wealth Institute events featuring key speakers like Robert Kiyosaki, Les Brown, Nick Vujicic, Janet Atwood, Brian Tracy, Jack Canfield, Marcy Shimoff, and many, many more. You can go and claim a ticket in the show notes to one of our upcoming events. We have in multiple time zones, so make sure you pick one that is easy for you to get. So thank you so much for listening. And I want to tell you about our next episode, which is one I am really, really excited about. Next episode is with Jenna Jameson. So whether you know her name from pop culture or not, this episode is about entrepreneurship at the highest level. She worked in a brutally crowded industry where everyone basically looks the same, and she was able to build a brand that broke her out of the bubble. She transcended the industry, built a company, engineered demand, and built and sold her business for over $100 million. So what we're going to learn from her is, what did she do differently to stand out, how she used strategy, scarcity, and mainstream positioning, and what you can steal from her playbook, even if your industry might be, let's just say, completely different from the one she was in. Now, finally, don't forget, make sure you claim that gift with 2 weeks free access to the Swedish Wealth Institute community so you can start implementing what you're learning. Link is in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please do me a quick favor. Follow it, leave a review, and send it to one person that really needs to see it. I'm Daniel Wood, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening.
I sat at a round table with all the people that work for me at Club Jenna. And I said, listen, this is my idea. Let's buy a billboard. They all looked at me like I was absolutely insane. And I'm telling you, this is going to change things. I decided, and I'm going to rent this billboard for 2 years. I expect you to double that and then pay me on the back end. Him saying, you are a tiger in business, and I'm going to pay it just because